A good man I know created a podcast to help heal the division in America. I think this was around particularly the time of the George Floyd murder and, around COVID, where there was just an enormous amount of division in the country. And obviously there still is, and there has been for a long time. And he had a lot of really great and interesting guests on the show. People who work with sort of mediation politically and are helping sort of drive initiatives across the country to sort of get people together and sort of facilitate higher quality conversations and, eliminate, the sort of really crasser elements of, this sort of horrible division that exists in America, particularly. That type of work is extremely noble and valuable, but it's not working at the root of the problem. And it's never ultimately going to be successful because you're just pulling out the thorns, but you're not pulling out the roots. Einstein said the problems of the world cannot be solved on the level of thinking that created them. The level of thinking that created them, not that I'm much of a historian, but you had the Dark Ages, and then you had the Renaissance and the Enlightenment, where we started to discover the scientific method, and all sorts of inventions were coming, and particularly in medicine and I guess engineering and architecture, and particularly medicine. Like things started to really look promising, that like we were being able to do some really valuable stuff, and that we could reason our way to a better future. And that worked pretty well, arguably, at least until World War One, when all of this technology was used for massive destruction and massive suffering and massive murder. And so it became pretty obvious that the thinking that we had pinned all our hopes on was not really delivering the goods. And that's the level of thinking that created the world that we have today, like in the problems of the world, Einstein said. Like it's the level of thinking that glorifies thinking. It's the level of thinking that says thinking is the answer to all of our problems. And so today, if you look around the world, particularly in America, so that's always like the cutting edge of the sort of cultural impulses, there's so much emphasis in trying to push the kids into STEM subjects, science, technology, engineering, and math, because we can solve all our problems through science and technology. But of course, we can't solve all our problems through science and technology. And in fact, we're now on the cusp of an era where we may be destroyed by the science and technology that we have created. So if you take a step back just for a single second, you might realize that, science and technology are not the answer to our problems. Excuse me. quality production. And that, thinking, because they're obviously sort of at the extreme most advanced end of thinking, like thinking is not going to solve our problems. That's the sort of eye-opening, mic dropping, like what type moment. Like humanity is stuck at a level of thinking where we think thinking is going to solve all our problems, and we can get in a room and try and reason with other people or people on the other side of the spectrum and come to some type of better solution and some type of improved situation. The evolution that is required, the level of thinking that we need to move to, is where we are still able to use thinking, as I am clearly able to do, but we do not glorify thinking. We do not, we put it in its place. And that means individually and collectively as well. I've done many, many years of, what you could call meditation and psychological stuff and all sorts of stuff like that. And in all of those disciplines, as with every different little nook and cranny of the world that you might care to look into, there's an extraordinary amount of bullshit and there's some truth. And I am very interested in taking the truth from all of those areas of sort of spirituality and philosophy and psychology and all that stuff, and distilling out the truth and leaving the bullshit and all the misleading stuff on one side. And what it really all comes down to is, your thinking happens, but and it right now at this stage in history, it consumes so much of your attention, and it doesn't just consume so much of your attention. I mean, let's just stay with that for a sec. Actually, like it consumes so much of your attention that maybe you're like you don't notice what's around you. Like you walk down the street and you don't notice that it's a beautiful day, or you don't notice that there's a pretty woman walking past you, or man, or you walk into something because your attention is so invested in your thoughts. And that classic example of the guy looking at his cell phone and walking into a swimming pool is best example I can think of. But your thoughts not only take up all that attention, but you also create an identity from your thoughts. And this is a very hard thing to grasp because it's like the goldfish that is swimming in water and like can't imagine like what I'm even talking about, perhaps on some level. But one of the things that meditation really does is you observe the thoughts coming and going. And you start to say, one way you can start is say, I wonder what the next thought I'm going to have is. And it comes and it goes. And then you can wait for the next one. It comes and it goes. And if you keep doing that, you extend that by, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, an hour, a week, a month, a year, 10 years, like you start to realize like, oh, those thoughts are not me. Like there's something that is observing these thoughts coming and going, and therefore I'm not those thoughts. And once you start to disidentify from the thoughts, like you start to have a different relationship with thinking. And this is what starts to allow us to move to a different level of thinking. And that is how we can solve the world's problems. There is no other way. Doesn't matter what good intentions you have about getting mediators together and getting political, progressive, thought leaders together. Like that's all excellent stuff. And God bless all those people and everyone who's doing that type of thing. But it's not going to solve the problem. Like we're all looking for love in all the wrong places. We're not looking in the right places. And the guy called Krishnamurti said true intelligence begins when you see the limitations of thought. What I was just talking about, where you start to sort of observe thinking instead of just being completely absorbed in it and sort of absorbed in it and sort of believing that it's me and my story and all my problems and all the things that I need to be happy and all the things that are wrong. Like once that's one part of it, is disidentifying from that stuff, but another part of it is just looking at thinking and thought and seeing like what it is capable of doing and what it's not capable of doing. And that's an exercise in intelligence. Like that's a growing of intelligence. It's like, yes, being able to use thought, but yes, being able to evaluate thought as a tool. And that's what allows us to move beyond these problems of the world where we view thought as the be all and end all of existence. Thanks, Descartes.